However, thank you once again for joining in today's session. June 12th, World Day Against Child Labor. COVID-19, though it has benefited or it has brought humanity into a standstill, wonder what is going to happen to our children, wonder what's going to happen, what is the toll it's going to take on our children and the future generations. Out of all of these issues, child labor is one of the greatest, tremendous um, issue that's gonna social stigma also that's gonna hinder our society. The biggest question is 70 years of independence after post lockdown or post COVID, if we are going to progress or we are going to digress into many other or digress back into post independence. So that's really something that all of us have to think about and work towards this issue. So thank you again. Thank you, Sonikuti sir. We have Rennie Jacobs sir. We have a lot of other esteemed people, significant contribution to this issue and to the society that has joined us on today's call. So I would like to request Rennie Jacob from IJM to take this forward.
Thank you, Chrysolite. Good to see you all. I just want to check whether Francis Thambi is already there or
Yes, he has joined.
he is joined. Okay.
Sir, I'm here.
I just want to see.
Yeah.
Right. Today we had different meetings, like the Ministry of Labor and Employment. They were having a very elaborate meeting. It came to an end almost by 2:45 or so, and different states were having meetings, especially by CSCL groups, and this is basically a small group with but leaders of NGOs who can make a difference. So indeed, it's nice to see you all, but then we have to look at the motto: protect children from child labor. More than ever is the context. And in the past, when we have discussion last month and all, we used to say post-COVID-19. Now we are little reluctant to say post-COVID because we don't know when is the post coming. So probably we cannot wait like that. This is a time where traffickers, perpetrators, they will make best during these disasters. And the same is the case here also. Families having low income, no income, they will take money from money lenders or pledge their children, and most of this child labor, I would believe that it is human trafficking and bonded labor. I don't believe in just child labor as a social issue like that. I would take it as a crime because there is an element of human trafficking and bonded labor part of it. In the context, like I was reading that the story of the child Jamila walking from Telangana to Chhattisgarh, a 14-year-old girl going home, and before reaching her home, just before 1 hour, she passed away. I see that report. And in Kerala also, technology is dividing people, especially tribal children, because we already started online teaching. The government has a channel called Victor's channel, and then it started. But a tribal girl committed suicide. She was a good studious girl, but she did not have TV at home. She committed suicide. So a group of people are left out in the process of, even in the technology. Instead of uniting, technology is also actually dividing and pushing people to the corner. But at the same time, there are smart girls, smart children. There is a story of a girl child sitting on the rooftop, getting her mobile, getting her the downloading done at the top of the roof. So immediately there were agencies to help her. I have also seen another child keeping her mobile in a bag, and with the help of a rope, she was taking that bag to the top of the tree so that she can get her material downloaded. There are children doing like that. But what I'm trying to say is, in a context like this, when dropout is going to increase, all children who are at the age of schooling, I would say government it is 14, for NGOs it is 18. All of them who are not in the school, but at the age of schooling, are potential child laborers. There is no doubt about that. And migration is actually complicating, making it very complex for the families. Many of them are returning on the way, many are dying. And we have seen the pathetic picture of a very small child trying to wake up her mother. So situation is like that. So we need to look at the issue of child labor with a new lens, because there is nothing like waste form and good form. When you say there are waste forms, we are indirectly saying there are some good forms of child labor. There is no good form. All forms of child labor are waste. So that should be the basic understanding we should have, because this is forced labor. No child is doing this labor with her own consent, or by even the consent is immaterial, as we know. A child cannot give a consent on that. They are all forced. Basically, it is a form of slavery. So we have to look at it from that lens, that it is a form of slavery. It's a crime. It has to stop. I would say that again, the children who are missing children, who are in difficult situations, all those children, actually there is no data of those children. Where are they? They are all missing. They are invisible. They are under the carpet. Nobody has any data of those children, bonded child laborers, those children in brothels, those children working in very difficult situations. So there is no data available. So the system, kind of a child protection system approach. It's not that when something happens, we jump into that, but there should be a system, a protective system where children are protected by the system itself. A system approach is something what is needed in the days to come. We have eminent speakers. All of the participants are having very good experience, and I don't take much time. I welcome especially all of you. Sonikuti, my close friend, Francis Tambi, Roshan Garu, all of them I know for many years, and many of my friends and colleagues in Andhra Pradesh. I take this opportunity to once again welcome each and every one of you all. And then I also hope that at the end we will come up with some very clear way forward, so that we will take it up with policy makers. Of course, in a difficult time like this, we could come together. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chrysolite, for giving this platform for us to come together. Thank you very much. Over to Sonikuti.
Thank you, Reni, and Roshan Garu, Francis, Chrysolite, all friends. I think most of us have been working on child protection and child rights for 2-3 decades and have been working together. And most of us have been active in campaign against child labor at one point or the other. And never in our history of at least my 30 years of work on these issues, I've seen as many sessions on World Child Labor, Anti-Child Labor Day as is happening today. I personally know of around 18 events that is happening today in different locations, and some of them running parallel to what we are doing. And this clearly shows the increasing global concern and the Indian concern that child labor is going to increase in India. And therefore, it is apt that we really spend some time looking at how to protect children from child labor more than ever now. I think the more than ever is very relevant today. If you really look at what was the scenario in 2016, according to UNESCO estimates, we had 269 million children out of school. And we had, of these 269 million out of school, we had 47 million children in India who do not progress into the upper primary school. And that is been the global scenario. And then what UNESCO says is that we're going to be going on a reverse gear and move 20 years backwards because of this pandemic. Now, that is the overall context. Now, when we start looking at what are the challenges in India for access to education, I think primarily we believe that children needs to be in school, they need to be going through education and they must have their facilities. And I think we just have one upper primary school for 2 primary schools and one high school for 3 upper primary schools and one higher secondary school for 2 high schools. So which means like, the spread equal, the numbers which we see transiting to higher education and moving up in India has been low. The scenario is already been bad. And from a situation which was bad, we moved to a situation which is worse. And I think this is coupled with the available infrastructure. What are we seeing around us? We just have 12.75% of schools that comply with all the 10 RTE parameters. We just have 50%, 53, 54% schools with adequate water, toilet, and hand wash facilities in this country. And this is the scenario which is there in school infrastructure and facilities. And this is like, it's not been something that actually attracts children. It's been something that is perpetually seen to be pushing children out. And for most of us who worked in Andhra Pradesh, the push out factor and is some of the things which we always been discussing about what are the pull factors and push factors. And we've seen that there are more things that will send children out of school. And how are those parameters going to change now? What is the legal framework? Has the legal framework become a little more easier for people to pull children out and to put them in employment? I think that transition of the legislative framework is something which needs attention. What is the transition that's happening in the education scenario? The most interesting part is like, under the right to education, we had access of children to schools and poorer children getting admission into private schools and getting educated. Now that is till 14 years. After the age of 14 and they move out of the RTE armpit, what happens to these children? Will they be able to continue in the same school with paying the money which other children are paying? I think that's something which is going to be a big push factor to get a lot of these children who are in private schools, who were getting that admission, are using the
Sonikudi, the sound is gone or it's stuck or?
Right to Education Act is going to be
Sonikudi, you are not audible for 1 minute. You back? Chrysolite, is he back or?
Um, that's what I'm trying to figure out. He is unmuted, or I'm unable to see that.
It's unmuted.
Maybe he has to re-log in.
No, I'm fine. I think I'm just getting disconnected.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now
I
it
mean,
is okay.
yeah.
2 minutes we could not hear you. Okay.
Oh, already. I thought I was. I saw you and I was speaking, and
No,
then I thought like,
two
okay,
minutes. You have to go back for 2 minutes.
yeah, okay. So what we are saying is, at least like we see in states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, we have around 30% children who are already out of school and who are already in child labor in 2011 census, which shows that the scenario was already bad. And the global Indian scenario is already bad, and the new legislation of working in farms and working in own house, and this one is made it feasible. There is already an area which is uh, quite weak in its explanation. So we are not very sure what the explanation. I know, for example, the Childline was calling me and saying that we need to have a consultative process. How do we really deal with 14 plus children who are in agricultural labor? Is there a way forward? So that is those are the challenges that is existing. In addition to, I've not gone into the challenges that is thrown by the COVID-19 scenario, the pandemic. The existing challenges itself are unsurmountable. We have a lot of challenges today, and what has happened is like the challenges have been much more in terms of like how do we really look at state action? Has the states have never been open to really pushing an agenda where we are able to make sure that we give that opportunity for children to continue education. There is no support, there is no sponsorship, there are no educational guarantee programs which make sure that every child is back in school. So, in that, we have the added pressure that has come out of the COVID scenario. And I am not going to go into the additional challenges that come into COVID scenario because all of us are in the field. We are all seeing it for ourselves, and we know what is the scene at the field level. Most of us are in the field level seeing this on a daily basis. So I thought like maybe next 2 minutes I'll look at what is it that we can do. Is there anything that we as a collective can do? The first challenge, as I said earlier, is like how do we really look at the number of children who have got admission in private schools under RTE, and who there is an imminent possibility of them dropping out. So this is one area. The second, I think, is possibly following up on every child who is returned home from hostels in these lockdown times, and make sure that we have a mechanism of bringing them back into the school. Now, because of the existing scenario, if more hands come into the villages and farming communities, they might see it as an opportunity. And in COVID times, a good monsoon this year, we're going to have a good monsoon. And that is actually a good monsoon is a very good thing for the country. But I think it actually has got a pull effect to get more children into labor because the labor scenarios have, the dynamics have changed completely in the country. So we really do not know how a good monsoon and good agriculture is going to have the impact. So this kind of a watchful eye of what is happening to these children and how do we make sure that these children get back into education is a high priority. The second area, the third area, I think is like how do we really push for a database of children who have come into the gram panchayats or panchayat levels. Not only the children people who had migrated out for labor and come back with families and children, Also children from hostels, childcare institutions, and everyone who is coming to a locality. Unless we have a localized monitoring mechanism, this does not work on a higher level. So how do we really look at this better usage of the Panchayat Raj systems or Gram Panchayats or whatever is available in different states to look at it as a monitoring mechanism? Uh, the third area, I think, is, the fourth area is like, how do we really look at a convergence of action of CSOs in terms of making sure that we use the Juvenile Justice Act and the child marriage um, prevention programs to make sure that there is a community watchdog function which really makes attempts to really get children into school and continuing their education. And I think education would actually be the best way ahead to keep children out of labor. And what kind of education and actually is something which we need to advocate for is a better vocational training and apprenticeship programs, and which would be job facilitating nature of education, which needs to be a reform and a focused attention, which we'll have to really look at it in a different manner. The additional challenge, I think the bigger challenge for dealing, for protecting children from child labor is going to be in urban areas. The urban areas, the facilities for education and the access to school in terms of like, for the general public, and also especially the slum dwellers and all that is already a weak infrastructure and system, and that is going to be something which needs a lot more of attention. And how do we really look at it in terms of reaching out? The sixth area is how do we really looking at RMSA and the NCLP program. Now, National Child Labor Project in this country is, I think, better funded than the ICPS or anything in terms of the resource availability, because it is under labor, and that is an area which needs a lot more of attention from CSOs. And how do we really look at using that as an education backup mechanism? Though I personally don't think that NCLP should be there, it should be with education. But since the money is available and they have been doing it, how do we really look at it from that, exploring the possibility of using that in favor of children and making those changes in NCLP program would be one way. I think the advocacy also needs to go into promoting our distance education, open school, and second chance education facilities, which needs to actually be opened up and give space to more children to come up forward. And I just know right now I know UP government is come out with a massive social protection program for to deal with child labor. The CM is just, I think UNICEF was working with the CM and this one in UP for the social protection program strengthening. And I think this is another area which we can usually use as a model and work together as a collective to really look at how do we move forward. I believe that CSOs and the collectives have a very strong possibility of being the mirror holder to the government. And we need to be generating data about the increasing number of, children who are there. If there is dropout, how do we really get into a dynamic relationship with the media and generate this kind of stories and scenarios in communities and project them so that the attention of the state comes into dealing with this one. So possibly a strategy of advocacy active media campaign on realistically pushing the agenda of children, and especially what is happening in terms of child labor, child marriage, uh, working closely with the child lines and making sure the data information that comes out is used is going to be an effective way of working. Our partnership with uh, the commissions is going to be critical. Our partnership with the judiciary is going to be critical. We've seen that the Supreme Court yesterday have given guidance on because of the Tamil Nadu incident of one children's home having 35 children affected uh, last day for yesterday. The Supreme Court has come out with guidance on these. So there is a window of opportunity with the judicial interventions and the commissions and others using the media also proactively, which would give us a possible way ahead. And I think it is going to be more of collective thinking and strategizing that will help us to move forward. Over from me, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonikuti. You have given a good context for us to continue the discussion. You have highlighted the challenges and also come up with some good recommendations, and we are happy about that, especially CSOs as the mirror holder is very important in these days. And we'll be noting down some of these recommendations, and we will compile it and we will take it forward. We have Roshan Garu, the CSEL convener for AP, and Francis Tambi. And I also see the veteran child labor expert Victor Raj. Is this the same Victor Raj, or our Pondicherry Victor Raj, or different Victor Raj? Hello? Victor is there,
Yeah.
no? My God.
Yes.
So we will request you to give the, yes, Victor, you will be giving the concluding remarks, okay? And we are very happy that you are also with us. You are the national convener of CSEL, and you are the best person to talk to us also. Yes.
Okay, Reneji. Yeah, carry on. I'm with
now,
you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, among we may have to think of the time also. Probably 10 minutes we'll have to take. Among Francis Tambi, Advocate Francis Tambi and Roshan Garu, who will go first?
Roshan sir, మీరు చెప్పండి.
Francis.
Roshan.
Okay, Roshan Garu. Roshan Garu.
Right, sir. Right. Okay, I'm here.
Yes. And we'll limit it to 10 minutes, sir.
Fine. Okay. Thank you, Reneji, and Sonikuti ji, Victor Bhai,
and
yes. Chris Clare, and other friends, Hari and other friends. So good evening, and we just had our program here in Guntur, commemorating the day against child labor, where we had the labor department and all that. So anyway, so Reneji was able, we were able to hear the numbers from Sonikuti ji, and at the same time the gravity of the problem, and also the certain practicable solutions also, a good solution that has come up, which we need to really debate on it and then make it more viable. And then I think, and some of the suggestions are again in the hands of the suggestions that we make, but ultimately it is the government that need to be geared up, to that the situation. Fine. Without much going to the numbers, I think we need the COVID, as all of us know, has left us with a lot of issues and problems. At the same time, it also opened up many things. One thing that I think we should recognize is many institutional gaps that were there till today, we are able to recognize those institutional gaps because those gaps have become part of the life. Like we are talking now today, we are not now talking about living with COVID. Similarly, we have been living with those gaps both in government and non-governmental because we experienced that it is not much to be done. But those gaps now have become, I mean, we are able to see them from a lens, lens, microscopic way of looking at things. Like, for example, say one small example about migrants. Though there are so many studies at different levels, we never had thought of the magnitude of the problem until they started walking on roads. So, see, and at the same time, all these migrants are not just individuals. There are families. Families having women, families having children. So I really like the way the Sonuji Guptaji put about NCLP because I'm also one of the persons who says I've been, I mean, though we work with NCLP here in the district and state, but you know, I think in the days, in many under as part of many schemes, I think NCLP has become very small now. But now, with this COVID situation, it is high time that NCLP is rejuvenated, widen its mission, widen its scope, and widen its operational mechanism with a appropriate kind of operational mechanisms in place and all that. Because we need to look at all those things. I think this is one thing that I would like to bring it to note. And of course, though the global human society has very bad experience with COVID, but at the same time, the bigger part of the universe, that is be it environment, be it ecology, be it animals, be it trees and forests, had a very good experience with COVID. We recognize that because again, it is again the human intervention, human fault that made them to suffer. And now, for about 3 months or so, the part of the universe, that is the ecology, has enjoyed their full freedom without any human intervention. No traffic, no pollution, nothing. So, in the Paris convention on sorry, the ecology and environment and all that. I was also thinking about the environment, but more than whatever they planned, more than the plans and more than the money they were planning to spend or already spent, COVID within 2 months have achieved those goals with respect to ecology and environment, right? So, including your, I mean, here, I just wanted to bring it to the same time, the numbers that we've been talking about, because as Sodu Putis already said, the upper middle are getting dropped to lower middle are getting dropped to poorer status. The poor people are getting dropped to below poverty. I think we need to visit all these classes once again, and we need to redefine what do you mean by below poverty now. Below poverty. I think the below poverty is again need to be redefined. We need to visit it again and revisit it. Similarly with SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and the situation prior to COVID itself, we had a discussion that is it going to be realized by 2030? with COVID, I think most of the development we achieved with governments, with UN bodies, with all the networking, with all the government and armed bodies, CLs force, has gone back minimum 15 to 20 years back. Take it any human development indicator. Take it any human development indicator, be it health, be it education, be it women's focused issues, any development indicator for that matter, human development indicators in particular, it has gone back 15 to 20 years back. I think we as the people in the help of the FIES and people at different levels, including the government, we need to revisit all these, be it sustainable development goals, be it UNCRP, child rights and all that. We need to revisit and redefine and see that, and also the timeline. See, so we have now to start. As Rini said, it is not post-COVID at all. Post-COVID, we do not know when it is going to be post-COVID, because scientists and everybody says, the economy says that we need to live with COVID. We don't know whether 1 year, 2 years, and whatever, we don't know. We don't know. It could be post-lockdown. Even the post-lockdown situation, what is the situation going to be immediately after the lockdown? Post-lockdown, immediately after about 3 to 6 months. After 6 months of post-lockdown, what is going to be there? I think even the strategies that we have been talking about, even the mechanism that we are trying to improve upon, need to be dynamic enough to suit to that situation. You know, it is very difficult to just to say because of COVID it has happened, so we have a ready-made solution. It is not going to work like that. I think those situations, those strategies, those solutions have to be highly localized, highly regional, and also, of course, there are things that we need to talk about in general also. In general, and Rini, I don't know. Soniji, not Rini, do you have time? Some more time? I don't know. I've not looked at.
2 minutes more you take.
Right. Thank you. So the UNICEF Executive Director said, no, as poverty rises, schools close, and availability of school services decreases, more children are pushed into workforce. No other than the UNICEF Executive Director says this. So I think all the situations not in favor of the people that are working at the grassroots. Even the contact with the community is going to be very difficult, because we've been talking about online, but online, how many children can access online? How many children can access online? So is it an appropriate, is it only solution that we have? Is there any other solution that will reach the children? Because no one behind, no? Reach no one behind, reach everyone. Leave no one behind. Leave no one behind, right? Leave no one behind. So what is the appropriate strategy to realize leave no one behind? Because we've been talking about, I don't know, maybe you're talking about corporate schools. Maybe you're talking about the communities that can afford. But what is the percentage? What is the percentage? Then I think we should also forget about percentages. When you say leave no one behind, I think percentages doesn't matter at all. It should be 100%. It should be 100%. So what is the different mechanisms that we can think about to reach every chain? So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan Garu. Thank you for your insights. Especially, we need to have strategies which are localized and also dynamic, suiting to the context. and it is not probably post-COVID, it is probably post-lockdown. Thank you, Roshan Garu. Now we will have the floor open to Advocate Francis Thambi for his insights. Yeah. Yes, Francis. You are muted.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Reniji. So, good evening all. Respected sir, I'm Mr. Soni Kutijaj, Child Protection Specialist, UNICEF. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Respected Mr. Roshan Kumar, Convener, AP Pro Child Group and Director of SEEDS. Respected Madam, the champion of Red Rope Movement, Miss Chrislet. Respected Reniji and respected Victor Raj, Mr. Victor Raj from CSL, and all NGO champions and all other social workers. Very good evening to you all. Thank you for this very good chance to share my views about this World Day Against Child Labor 2020. Today we all came together to discuss on child labor. Today I will share my talk in three parts. One is in a general analysis. Second one is what is the risk at present, and third would be the actions forward. What would be the appropriate actions sought from my side. Today we all came together to discuss on child labor because it deprives child from a normal childhood. You all know it is deprivation of education, adequate education, proper health, care, leisure time, or just basic freedom. It promotes the risk of abuse and exploitation. This is why we came together. It promotes very well the abuse and exploitation risk for every child. So we need to discuss at high level, and we need to come out with appropriate actions, and we need to act on that. Just planning is not just planning doesn't make any difference for the child. So today is a remarkable day because not just it is World Day Against Child Labor 2020, but you and me all should remember that it is COVID-19 World Day Against Child Labor. COVID-19, it means more challenging. It is very challenging for us all, and it's challenging for the children's life. Already child labor have devastating impact on childhood due to this COVID pandemic, and this emergence of pandemic COVID issues a double impact, which will surely make the children living conditions more deteriorated. This is a very pathetic situation where we witnessed so many migrant laborers have been walking on the roads till date. But there were so many efforts from the government side, from the civil society side, from so many networking groups, actors, and very good actors. They supported a lot. But still, the conditions were, and we cannot explain the situation what they faced. The basic minimum rights were violated in their lives. Their children means horrible. It's really a horrible situation. We know. You all know, let us not continue in that discussion, but this World Day Against Child Labor held every year on June 12. It is intended to foster the worldwide movement against child labor. It is clearly intended to foster the worldwide movement. But we need to really assess today whether we are in those lines or we are stepping back. Not due to only COVID, but also very fewer actions, very fewer plans, non-implementation of the plans, non-implementation of the policies. Definitely, we generally, if we remark one thing, for instance, we conduct very occasional rescues as a special drive. Do they really contribute to the child labor world? Do they really contribute to rescue full child labor from entire society? That is one of the challenge we need to think about. And this year, exactly the theme focus on urgent need to protect children from underage labor, and in this COVID pandemic time. So actually this day is envisaged to bring together governments, local authorities, civil society and international authorities, workers and employment organizations to point out the child labor problem, and define the guidelines to help the child laborers. And not just to commemorate the day or really just shout and go back and go into a normal process. Not like that. This is envisaged to bring together, to point out the child labor problems and really come out with accurate solutions and strategies. As rightly Soni sir told, we need to launch a multi-dimensional, multifaceted campaign where child rates are indivisible. We clearly know it is not only child labor, but children when they enter into child labor, they are into basket of crimes. Automatically, they are into basket of crimes. So we really need to launch a multi-dimensional campaign which saves every childhood. And uh, uh, we are also missing with practical solutions. We generally we defend so much. We talk at international level, but action at local level is mandatory. What I visualize, think big, act local. We know very well. So kindly we need to consolidate our remarks finally to come out with a practical solutions which are missing at present in the society at large. Grassroots level actions are very missing. Why I'm remarking like this means we as Child Rights Advocacy Foundation, we are working in so many villages to promote as child-friendly villages. There we see that village child protection committees can play major role, vital role to really track the children who are migrating out from the villages. But till today, there are no registers which are tracking them. This is the grassroots level problem, and we are still looking and talking about manifestations which were expelled out of the problem. So this is why I'm suggesting today, sorry, grassroots level actions are required, and some solutions are to be framed very clearly and to be enacted in the villages. And in just a matter of weeks, we experienced the COVID-19 outbreak has already had drastic consequences for children. Their access to education, food, and health services has been dramatically affected across the globe, including India and also Andhra Pradesh. As poverty rises, we know very well the parental poverty. The parental poverty consistently affects the childhood of the children. The parental poverty, though so many social workers, eminent social workers say that poverty is not the real cause of child labor, but still we need to consider this issue. The parental poverty still contributes to the prevalence of child labor. So we need to address that in this situation. And temporarily school closure may have permanent implications. This we need to really advocate for foremost. Temporary closure may have greater implication for the poorest and vulnerable children, because the poorest children immediately starts working. Once the child goes to work, we know the wonders what will happen. We know clearly. No need to give much more analysis. They will never come back to the school. It will be very difficult for us. For instance, why I am remarking like this? The COVID impact and also the school closure, immediately all the children goes to the fields. Yes, it may cause, because I took this fact through a incident very recently, very traumatic, very unfortunate accident which was happened in Machavaram village of Prakasam district, where two or three children, I don't remember clearly, 2 or 3 children who are below 18 years deceased. The tractor after working, they are coming back to the home, they hit a electrical pole where they got electrocuted, and after that 3 children died. So they were 18 years below. By this incident, I understand, I clearly get educated that children are pushed to child labor because of this pandemic. So next, if you discuss, the United Nations declared 2021 year as International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, an effort to eradicate this form of abuse and exploitation. It is a milestone in reaching the Sustainable Development Goal of Target 8.7. The emergence of COVID-19 places these goals into great peril. It is not possible. Now, we need to really draft some possible actions. How can we travel towards that way? Where United Nations envisages that 2021 is the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor. This is one area where we need to really focus, really to rethink. Because of this pandemic, as Roshan sir and also Soni sir remarked that we are going back. The global health crisis is leading to mass disruption with far-reaching consequences. Many children are out of school, and economic pressures on families continue to grow. This very well remarked by Soni sir. This could push millions of children into child labor and makes child labor into imminent concern. So, we still, if we discuss about the very recent issue, many children were migrant workers who walked back to their villages with little money and food. We need to really experience what is their situation now. We know that all the migrants walked back, but at present in the villages, what is their situation? Whether those families are getting enough economy, whether these children are getting fed enough, these things. So I may go in general, but these things are very serious issues. We really need to monitor, closely observe what is the situation of migrant families who walked back to their villages. What is their situation? Whether they are getting the livelihood, whether the children are getting enough feed. So these are the points where we need to focus. There are also high chances that child labor in home-based enterprises, agriculture, and hazardous occupations may see a rise aftermath of the coronavirus crisis. As Mr. Roshan sir rightly remarked, there is no aftermath. We need to continuously march with corona. So continuously we need to observe what would be the children's situation in the home-based enterprises and also the agriculture. So now coming to an end, what are the exactly what risks are envisaged now? Exactly what risks are there for the child labor? More children will be pushed into the child labor and also commercial sexual exploitation. These two are interlinked areas. More children will be pushed into child labor and also commercial sexual exploitation to meet family basic needs. Children will be the main breadwinners now. So more responsibility on children to assist in family activities, which may be agricultural and home-based industries, where there is no ample focus and also monitoring. They are not really the industries where they are not very rightly regulated. We need to, at grassroots level, we need to focus on home-based industries and also agriculture. And girls, coming to girls, every time vulnerability is higher and higher. Girls will be the greater responsibility. Girls will be with greater responsibility for family survival to take care of all domestic duties. It is very regular. Why to remark now means with more intensity, they'll be bounded with the duties and also sibling care at home. So now the very new world we entered, this is a virtual world. We are not connected at all to each other in the communities, in the villages also. So now we need to really think about gender now. It is reinforcement of traditional gender roles. The girls will be again reinforced to take up traditional gender roles. Nowadays, the girls are coming out to get well educated and to go into well done professions. But this COVID pandemic is going to result to move and promote to reinforcement the gender roles. Please be cautious or focus on it. Child marriage, though child marriage is not a current topic today, but this is interlinked to the child labor. Child marriage increases as a survival strategy of the family. Immediately, the families we are working in the child-friendly villages, where the villages in the vicinities, in the adjacent to those villages, so many incidents are coming up today. They are saying very soon we should marry off for my children, because due to some superstitious beliefs that and also the health risk they are facing nowadays. So these survival strategies will come up in the families. So child marriage is probably increasing, and the governments. I need 1 minute.
Yes.
1 minute, okay.
For 2 minutes you can.
2 minutes. Thank you. Am I audible clearly?
You can keep that mouthpiece little more closer.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. The governments, I need not criticize. I really need to appreciate all the governments. Government has done well for the rescue or facilitating the migrant workers or child labor to overcome this pandemic. But They are overburdened with many issues and may not be able, I'm remarking, they may not be able to prevent child labor exploitation. So we need to be cautious. Civil society need to be cautious now. Children are in isolation. As rightly Soni sir remarked that we also need to take conscience about the child care institutions and also other parts. Children are in isolation and they are not accessible to their caregivers, and they are also disconnected from other support groups. They are clearly disconnected from the other support groups. So nowadays, see, in Bal Panchayats, we run so many Bal Panchayats in child-friendly villages, and we made so many village child protection committees functional. Children are not getting connected. They are not access to these groups. So we assume so many issues will be reported very soon. Next month, probably we are planning next month or the next month to organize some meetings in the villages. Children will come up surely with so many abuse incidents in their families or neighbors. We must get connected. So, my dear all civil society agents or eminent social workers, I give a call to really get connected with community groups, remotely or in any other way. So, get connected with them. So what would be the appropriate actions to be taken up right now? Identify and follow up children in our catchment area who are engaged in or at risk on emerging child labor. Identify and follow up the children. That is my first recommendation for the action. Second is that consult younger children and adolescents through helplines. There is Childline, there are so many other helplines, community members or remotely, to develop some key messages about the risks and consequences of child labor and design a plan of action for them on how to overcome. There is still innocence in the families in the rural villages. Kindly, everyone develop some key messages and send these key messages to the villages. Facilitate the families to access all the social security schemes. Still, we wonder there are so many children who doesn't have Aadhaar cards, who are not included into the ration cards. That is the situation. Social security schemes and entitlements provided by the government should be accessed by each and every child. Coordinate with multi-sectoral actors to develop family strengthening strategies to address child labor. This is must and foremost we need to focus on. We need to support community members and groups such as child protection committees to develop and lead community level initiatives to prevent and respond to the child labor. There are committees, there are community level groups, but I don't remark that totally they are on paper, totally they are not functional. But to some extent, if they are made functional, really it will help, great help to the child labor issue. And finally, assess and build capacity the community level protection actors and systems to engage in efforts to prevent and respond to child labor. There are so many people who are interested to come out and support the child labor eradication issue. But we are missing. We are unable to train them. We are unable to identify them. We are unable to promote them with very good key messages. Please, kindly, we need to do that. And finally, prevent family separation by addressing priority health and food security and livelihood needs of the families. And I think I made it in very general and vague way. Thank you all, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Francis Thambi, for a very insightful talk. You have highlighted the issues and a lot of recommendations also you have come up. And I am very happy if you could share your notes with us so that we can compile it, all of you who have come up with some notes, because I know that you are all prepared. So it will be good for Chrysolite to compile it, and probably CSEL will take it forward. But something like the grassroots level actions is very important that you have highlighted more. I think that's very important, that the database part, the strengthening of child protection units at the village level, those are going to be very, very important in the days to come. Thank you, Francis. Now I request Victor Raj.
Yes, good afternoon.
Please, Victor Raj is from Pondicherry. He leads the HOPE Foundation, or HOPE. Yes, you may say that. And then he was the national convener of campaign against child labor. The former campaign leader. So I would say that from the NGO world, he is one of the stalwart to talk about child labor. So basically, we would like you to focus more on the way forward. We are aware of the challenges and problems.
Yes, yeah.
Always we discuss that. Actually, we know that, but we want to have some more some insights on how we take it forward, especially in a context like this. What are your suggestions? How we will take it forward? Help us to understand that scenario. Thank you, Victor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends, and especially special wishes to Sony George, Roshan, and Advocate Francis Thambi, and Christolite, who recently got in touch. Also, all other friends. Yes, we all know, I mean, all these problems, especially it has been aggravated due to this COVID-19, because the family's economy is in bad shape, the industry's economy is in bad shape, and the country's economy is in bad shape. So everybody will tend to put the burden on children to get out of this loss and other financial problems, and also to lure the other industries from China to. That's why they are relaxing all the labor laws, which are, I mean, in turn putting the difficulty on the children. So I will directly go to the possible solutions. And also Advocate Francis Thambi already mentioned a lot of grassroots level measures and also the grassroots level structures which are available. So right now, I mean, throughout the country, there is CWC, JJB, and Childline. Childline was functioning even during the lockdown period. And, that is also SJPU. And apart from that, in Tamil Nadu, we have even village level child protection committee and block level child protection committee and district level child protection committee. I don't know whether this exists in AP and Telangana. So, but here, I mean, all the district level forums which I mentioned earlier, they are all functional. But the forums which I mentioned about village level and block level, they are, I mean, just in papers right now. Otherwise, there will be 12,500 village level child protection committee. If everything is vibrant, definitely we can achieve a lot. So these type of grassroots level structures should be strengthened. And also, I mean, everybody know about the efficiency or the inefficiency of the CLPRA for the past 30 years, and also for the past 4 years, we have a amended act, which is also not effective. And you all, I mean, we started with the reference to the 12-year-old girl child who, I mean, the girl child laborer, interstate migrant child laborer who was walking from Telangana to Chhattisgarh. So that has brought to light that we cannot, I mean, fool ourselves saying that there is no child labor. Mr. Soni also mentioned that, I mean, it's prevalent everywhere. Actually, Kerala is supposed to be the state where there is less child labor, and even in Thrissur, we have child labor, it is 7.7%, and Peran district in Nagaland is supposed to be having more number of percentages, roughly 37%. So there is no child labor free district in the country as of now. That can be very, I mean, clear. So, I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, these two legislation, even the old act and the new act, they have failed to curb the child labor or abolish child labor. So definitely our advocacy has to be strengthened at the top level to bring in stringent legislation to ban all forms of child labor up to 18 years. And yeah, I think Roshan also mentioned about, and Advocate also, this target 8.7 in SDG. That has to be highlighted to justify our demand also. But I mean, CACL has been demanding this for the past 25 years. But I mean, we didn't have the support of all the child rights activists most of the times, because they tell me, I mean, we will bring in legislation first for up to 14 years and things like that. There were difference of opinion. But right now we have, I mean, same opinion, because by the year 2025, we have to ban child labor in all forms. And Mr. Soni also mentioned about the implementation of the RTE. Even after 10 years, the situation is only around 10 to 11% of the schools are RTE compliant. So even if we start the complete ban measures now, it will take another 10 years to achieve the goal of complete, even to, 10, 20% to achieve, another 10 years. So the demand has to be strengthened, and we have to work from top. At the middle level, at the state, we have to pressurize the state to fill in the vacancies of all these child protection structures, the DCPU, CWC, and unfortunately in Tamil Nadu, even the SCPCR posts are vacant for the past 4 or 5 months. So this has to be done at all the levels, from central level, yes, strong legislation, and at the state level, filling up all the structures, and at the grassroots level, the convergence is very, very important at the grassroots level. And during this pulse polio immunization, you must have seen the level of convergence, which it is possible to be done. Whether it is a school, whether it is an Anganwadi, whether it is a bus station or railway station, even in toll gates, we can see the people standing with the pulse polio drops so that all the children are covered. Similarly, this effort of banning child labor and abolishing child labor should be taken at all levels. And some of you also know that, CSEL has come up with an alternate legislation child labor. There is no more regulation and prohibition and things like that. We need a Child Labor Abolition Act. That's all. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. We are very glad that we could listen to you from your vast experience of working with the issue of child labor. I believe for 3 decades or maybe.
No. Yeah.
I'm keeping it little short.
Okay. Now, just because I'm not dyeing my hair, you need not to increase the experience. Okay.
I am also in the same bed.
Okay. Yes. Please.
Yes. Thank you very much. It was really great listening to you, Victor.
Okay,
and now the floor is open for some discussions, comments. We have experts in the field who are also becoming participants today, but we want them also to speak and share their thoughts. The floor is open. Probably we should take only 1 minute so that we will limit, and our discussion will be over by 5:30. So it's open, and you can even ask questions or clarifications. All our panelists are there. Yes. Anybody would like to ask some questions or clarifications?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are trying to create panchayat level awareness on trafficking and also on child labor. While we are doing this, our greatest question is, how do we incultivate or let parents know that they shouldn't be sending their kids for labor work, but they should be sending their kids to education or for schooling. How do we build that strongly into their minds? Because hunger is something that is driving all of them. But how do we say, let's prioritize child rights, or let's prioritize humanity over hunger?
Mm-hmm. Who is answering? Victor, can you give an insight on that question? Yes, Victor. You are not mute. You are muted.
Okay. Crystal, can you kindly repeat the question? I didn't get it fully. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was saying, we would like to do panchayat level awareness on human trafficking and child labor.
Yes.
So while we are doing that, how do we build this strongly into parents, saying that, hunger is the issue, but let's not prioritize it over child rights or child freedom or humanity. Because child labor is happening mostly, the primary reason is because of hunger, because these people, migrating workers or lower income people, do not have sufficient to provide, hence they are pushed into this. But now
Okay.
how do we actually tell them that let's
Yes.
think beyond hunger?
Okay. Yeah, actually, I mean, I had one or two suggestions in that line also, but I mean, since we were like winding up, I curbed the suggestions also. For example, I mean, these midday meal schemes, also the Balwadi and Anganwadi are defunct for the past 3 months. This should have been started and serving food. And it's also, I mean, they can very well start right now. I can quote some example from Tamil Nadu. Even, I mean, they started even the Tasmak shops, the wine shops run by the government. And you can see the types of arrangements they did. No, like, I mean, from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, it is for the senior citizens. From 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, it is for the people between 40 to 50 years, like that. So similarly, to avoid the crowd and also to keep the physical distance, we can very well have the midday meal scheme and also the Anganwadi and Balwadi running, so that the no family or at least the children, they don't starve at different timings. And also right now, I mean, Telangana was the first to abolish this 10th standard exam, I think. And though the exams were, I mean, abolished, I think we can start the schools now, at least for the high school level and higher secondary school level, because the dropout is mostly prevalent in those level, and they can regularly go to the schools and avail the midday meals also. And also slowly we can go for middle school and then primary schools. That is this one. And right now, I mean, after the now, I mean, they are telling that the lockdown is over or it's an unlocking period and things like that. And already the 1.7 lakhs crore benefit, I mean, the economic package included something for the NREGA workers to increase the salary and all these things. But I think, I mean, they have not started working. But right now, since the unlock has been done, the people can be given the 100 days employment, and then so there is no more, I mean, starvation. This is my immediate response.
Thank you, Victor. And we have a question to Francis Thambi. This is from Anuradha Garu. Highlight more on the local community level action, grassroots level action, which Thambi Garu was talking about. She wants to have little more reflections, little more ideas on that part. Yes.
Yes, Reni sir. Anuradha madam, thank you for your question.
Little more sound. You can speak little more loudly.
Yeah, thank you, Reni sir. Thank you, Anuradha madam, for the question. And here I want to highlight two issues. How can we really sustain or build a very strong movement at grassroots level is child participation is one strategy. Child participation. Every village should have a Bal Panchayat or a child club or a Bal Sangha, whatever name we give. Every month they should come together. They should discuss on the issues. They should really draft some solutions. They should come out with some actions. This is where we can really provide some solutions. Second is that there should be definitely an adult support group for the children, because when the children come in forward to some sort of actions they plan, the adults sometimes the adults may suppress it. So in every village there should be a adult support group. It may be called as village child protection committee. Andhra Pradesh have every village child protection committee, but it is comprising more over with all the local officers, but not exactly like that. It may be like a adult support group. Every village should have one children group. one adult support group. It should be continuously educated. It should be continuously informed. It should be continuously meeting, and it should be continuously doing some advocacy. This is the only key how we can really get some solution. As already, I will also would like to answer. Ms. Chrysolite asked that how can we really teach the families? No, we should come up with some strategies or some IEC materials or somehow some video visuals or something like that, and really educate the community level support groups such as child groups and also the adult support groups. They will carry forward, because see, for example, today we are away from the communities. Today, right now, we are away from the communities, but the committees or the villages are there only. If until today they were educated, they can clearly respond. That is my prescription for the this grassroots level empowerment. Thank you.
Okay, this is Roshan.
Rennie, your mic is muted.
Roshan Garu, are you going to add to the point?
Yeah. No, it's not actually answering. This is I'm trying to respond to Chrysolite. Okay,
Chrysolite. Okay.
Right? Chrysolite and also to Anuradha. Just to add something.
Yes,
Like, you know,
please.
I think Victor rightly also mentioned about our polio experience. No, polio experience. It's a very successful campaign. The polio work, because of supply chain effective supply chain management and also human resource management. And mostly it is successful because of the ALMs, ASHA workers, and Anganwadi workers, because everyone takes responsibility to reach out every child, be it at home, be it on street, be it in railway station, be it on bus station, be it on streets, everywhere. They are at a saturated mode. At a saturated mode, they do it. Similarly, grassroots level or a community level, I think, particularly in Andhra Pradesh, okay, panchayat, of course, the panchayat, the people's representatives are yet to come in place. Of course, once they come in, I think we can think of sensitizing them and capacitating them and all that. But meanwhile, we do have the gram, village and gram ward secretaries now, and every 50 houses we have a government kind of delivery mechanism. I think we also need to bring in the factor of child rights, be it child marriage, be it child labor, into their system. You need to systemize, and institutionalize those systems to see that child rights from all aspects are protected at a village itself, at their home itself, in the street itself, in the school itself, in the Anganwadi itself. I think I was also the other day I was talking about child marriage. See, most of the child marriages, at least whatever is been reported, it's not whatever is reported, we all of us know it is less than 20%. Less than 20%. Around 80% go unreported. But even those reported, most of them are known to us, known to the system, child protection system, mostly through peer.
Yes,
The peers. What I mean to say is, usually the girls at village, they share their good or bad with their friends, because schools are open. So though the parents feel it is very confidential, but it is known to the other children. So other children will bring it to if there is a Bal Panchayat in the system, they will bring it to the issue in the Bal Panchayat, or they will bring it to they will call child line, they know the child line, or they will tell somebody, or they may inform to the Anganwadi, and then it goes to the CDPO and the CMPOs, child marriage protection officers and all that, like that. So in COVID situation, you don't have those mechanisms working. The schools are not open. We don't know when they are going to open. Even they open it, we don't know how this is going to function.
Yes.
It's a big question now. It's a big question. So I think these, if you have a volunteer for every 50 villages who is looking after the pensions, all government delivery mechanism. I think this message, child rights message that includes child labor, includes child marriage, child labor or whatever, even in trafficking. No, if you remember, I'm sure Sonu Kutiji knows about the vigilance committees. You remember this vigilance committee system? You used to have a vigilance committees as usual on paper. The government has given a notification that within 2 days or 24 hours or 48 hours, they want the vigilance committees. Within 40 hours or 24 hours, all the project directors and rural development department, CDPOs made a list and submitted to the government. And the government had said that every village had a vigilance committee. What is the role of the vigilance committee? All the migrants need to be recorded in the village. Migrants moving out and coming in. Both the destination, both the source, they need to be recorded so that they will look at how many children are missing, because we are talking about missing children now. We are talking about children, so we don't have mechanism to track that. Actually, we had that. We had the vigilance committee mechanism in the form of government orders itself. It is not functioning now. It is no more at all now. At least now under ICPS system, you have these village child protection committees. Even it is also running in the same manner. Like even you go to the village and ask them, nobody knows who is a member of the village child protection committee member. Even you ask the member themselves, they don't know whether they are the member or not, because their name is just taken the card. So I think these systems are to be utilized. These systems are to be brought into the mainstream. Though they feel that they are the mainstream, but from many point of view, whatever the points that we have been discussing, they are not into mainstream. We need to bring them into mainstream and utilize those existing systems, and expand their wings, provide lot of knowledge, provide lot of information, provide lot of input, provide facilities to them for them to function. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan Garu. And we have William Christopher raising his hand. William,
yes,
Reni.
From
IGM Bangalore. Yes.
Reni, I've been working for the last 27 years in Karnataka with children and women as well. And now for the last 8 years, I'm with IJM Bangalore. So my experience working with these children, we have actually forgotten one set of children, those who have been completely neglected and which is not concentrated at all. In fact, if you look at the the statistics, that our states, the southern states, are actually day by day drastically increasing with child trafficking. And in Karnataka, yesterday we rescued around 10 bonded laborers, after which we have found 4 children. So my point here is this: in the situation of bonded labor, there are child bonded laborers. We are talking about child laborers, yes, of course, but we are actually completely neglecting the child bonded laborers, those who are with their parents in the facilities like brick kilns, rock quarries, and various other industries. For example, people from Telangana, yesterday's rescue is actually people from Telangana. As a whole family, they have come to Shimoga, which is one of the districts of Karnataka. And the children are dependent on the parents. Now, what all the IEC materials or the children's club or community club, all this which we are talking about, whether it is vigilance committees or children's club, or it is children's panchayat, whatever it may be, everything is which is the children are visible in the outside world. But what is our concern regarding the children, those who are isolated, those who are actually hidden? And there are many I have seen myself, there are many garment factories. We had around 199 young girls who actually came from Odisha to Doddaballapur in Karnataka, and they were actually confined in that factory. They were not allowed to go back, and they are young, trained girls, very young girls. So what is happening to them? How are we ensuring? These are all some of the things that we need to look at. How do we ensure that the hidden areas are being met and they are informed about this? So I'm also thinking in the other way. The children actually, when we worked on National Movement of Working Children, it's a national level movement. Since 1997, we organized that and worked. When I was in World Vision Training, the children said, "See, you people are discussing about us without involving us. How do you involve us to get to know what do we need? What are the changes that we need? How are we going to, look at that? Is there a way that we can look at how do we make a participatory, democratic decision on children, with the children, by the children?" This is the other one. The third one is that looking at the childline phone calls that we are getting, the recent National Childline India's National Board member has informed, stating that there are 70,000 children's phone call coming every time, which is a child labor related phone call. But most of the child labor phone calls are also related to child trafficking as well as child sexual exploitations. We are talking about child labor, child marriage, child trafficking, child sexual exploitation, missing children, everything.
You have to be a little brief.
Yes, finished. That's it. I'm just 3 areas that we need to focus is what I'm just trying to say.
Yes, this is well taken from the very beginning, from the introduction. We were also highlighting that 90% of the child labor is part of human trafficking and border labor, because they are all connected with agents. There is a perpetrator, and this is done for the sole purpose of exploitation. There is nothing more than that. So we should look at that angle of a crime, and not just as a social issue when it comes to child labor. We are short of time, and we may have to close. Anybody a burning question, something like that? Just one person, just one more. Any comment? Okay, thank you very much. We had a good session. Over to Chrysolite to propose a vote of thanks and your concluding thoughts.
Thank you everyone for those lovely insights. Especially thank you Rennie sir for moderating it, for Soni Kuti George, for Roshan, for Francis and Victor for giving your experience and practical insights on how we can battle this and together how we can overcome this issue. It's really humbling for us that you, all of you, in spite of your busy schedules, you could take time out for us and share your thoughts with all of us, enlightening us. So thank you so much. It really means a lot for us, because you experts, out of your decades of experience, sharing those little tiny bit with us, boosts us to do much more for what we are called to do. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in. For those that are not on our WhatsApp group, can I request you to send us a message on this number, and then we will add you onto the WhatsApp group to see, to be connected and to have updates on our upcoming programs and schedules.
We hope that you will take the lead in compiling some notes and sharing it with us.
Yes,
and all the speakers also may give a gist of their thoughts so that we can compile it. And I would suggest that Roshan Garu, as part of the CSEL campaign, should take it forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chrysolite, for giving this platform. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Okay, nice catching up with all of you old friends. Yeah. Okay, thank you for
Good
that.
seeing you, Victor. All the best.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Soni Kuti, for your time.
Rennie ji,
Okay.
I'm
so much.
Rennie ji,